Once you've sort of figured out what your brand is going to look like generally and what tools you want to use and what pieces you're going to blend together, whether you're going to use a logo and a tagline, whether you're going to have a website or you're going to, build your brand off of Instagram. Once you've figured out generally what your brand actually looks like, there are a few tips and tricks that I thought might be helpful for you moving forward in staying consistent and growing your brand. The first is to make some broad rules. I know I mentioned this earlier, but I find it really helpful no matter whether you're talking about Instagram specifically, whether you're talking about your website, whether you're talking about your colors or the language that you use. Make some broad rules or a brand guidelines document. Basically, what should always be the case and what should never be the case. Simple, yes and no's. You can make this as complicated as you want or as simple as you want, but make some broad rules and then stick to them. I do think that being too rigid can be difficult because then you end up having to do all kinds of steps and all kinds of extra legwork, and we are individuals running our own businesses. But you can also be too broad, and that can cause your brand to be kind of muddy or muddled. So whatever rules and guidelines you decide to create, make sure there's something that you can follow through on, things that you can be consistent with, and things that actually help clarify your brand and don't, create too much work or make it too complicated. The second tip is pick a couple platforms, pick a couple tools, and stick to them. There are a lot of tools out there. There are a lot of platforms out there. There are a lot of things you could be doing, but I really think that you're going to find eventually, if you keep changing this, that, or the other thing, you're going to spend more time on your brand and less time on your books. And what you really should be spending time on is writing more books. That doesn't mean you should never change them. Certainly, as you grow and change, you might have different needs. I used MailChimp for 8 years and recently switched to MailerLite because my needs changed and MailChimp didn't offer what I needed anymore. That's, my newsletter is part of my brand. I wanted to make it a more important part of my brand, and MailChimp couldn't do what I needed. So I switched. That said, I did use MailChimp for like 8 years. I used Canva for a long time, which is an image design software, and eventually it couldn't do what I needed it to anymore. And I downloaded GIMP, which is a free software, kind of like Photoshop. And it does what I need. High learning curve, and I'm probably going to stick with it for a long time because it took me so long to figure out what I was doing. But now I can do a lot more than I could do with Canva. I tried PicMonkey, which is another Canva-like platform. It has a subscription. And I actually really liked it. You can do a ton more with it than you can do with Canva, but you have to use it in your browser, and it was too slow on my internet connection. And so I ended up going back to GIMP. So pick your platforms and tools, stick to them. You're absolutely welcome to change if your needs change, but keep in mind that every time you pick a new platform, pick a new tool, you're going to have to learn a bunch of new things, and you might end up not liking it, and then you waste a lot of time, which could be spent writing books. So pick your platforms and tools and try to stick with them. If you decide to switch up your brand, this is tip number 3, do it purposefully. Don't just switch up your brand because you're bored with it, or because you think it's ugly, or because you don't like it anymore. Switch your brand with purpose. Ask yourself, why am I doing this? How is this going to benefit my readers? How is this going to clarify my brand promise? Don't just do it willy-nilly. Have purpose and vision behind the changes that you make to your brand. Tip number 4, don't be afraid to experiment. Certainly consistency is important, but if you start doing something and it's not working, that is an exercise in futility if you keep doing it. Stop doing it. Figure out, do you just need to change, what you're doing slightly, or do you need to completely stop doing it? Experiment, analyze, track stuff, figure out why things are or aren't working, and be patient. But don't be afraid to experiment. Don't stay stuck doing the same things if they're not working. Try different things, and then once you find something that works, keep doing it. Be consistent and continue, on a path towards success, hopefully. When you figure out strategies that work, or when you figure out branding pieces of your brand that, are really core to you and what you think in your books, use them everywhere. Reuse content, if you read a blog post and you think it's good, turn it into an Instagram post. If you make an image for your header on your website, post that on Instagram, post it on Facebook, put it on Pinterest. If you have a really cool font that is used on your book covers and you end up really liking it, use it on your website, use it on your business cards, whatever you need to do. Be consistent and use that everywhere. It saves you time, it saves you money, it saves you effort, and it creates a consistent visual look across all the different platforms, websites, and places where potential readers might see your work, and it consistently reminds them of your brand promise. And if for some reason you can't use a particular type of branding, say for example you go to a book signing and you forget your banner that has your fonts and your colors on it, it's okay. Just remember the core purpose behind your brand, remember your brand promise, and wing it. Do your best. That's all we can really do in the grand scheme of things anyway.